warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, class. So today we'll be moving on to a new topic in the combined science physics. So we'll be starting on energy. So first, as usual, let's look at our lesson objective. So the lesson objective is able to describe how energy is stored and transferred during processes based on the principle of energy conservation. It's long, yes, but we can just break down this lesson objective into our steps to success, which are: one is to recall the principle of conservation of energy. 2, identify and give examples of stored energy. And 3, identify and give examples of energy transfer processes. Okay, so basically this is the breakdown of the lesson objective. So if you know 1, 2, 3, you'll be fine for this lesson. Okay, so number 1 is to recall the principle of conservation of energy. So you have to know what is the principle of conservation of energy. So basically, principle of conservation of energy is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So energy cannot be created, energy cannot be destroyed. This is one of the principles of conservation of energy. So since energy cannot be created nor destroyed, energy can only change from one type to another. Okay, so these two sentences is what the principle of conservation of energy is about. Okay, let's break it down more. So, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Because it can't be created or destroyed, so the energy is then stored. Okay? Since the energy is stored, usually stored energy is energy that you don't really use because it's stored. So you don't really use it during a process. On the other hand, energy that can change from one type to another. So when energy changes from one type to another type, this means the energy is transferred. Energy is usually transferred during a process. Okay, so let's look at that again. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Because they can't be created nor destroyed, you have stored energy. Okay? Energy can only change from one type to another. Because energy can only change from one type to another, you have the transfer of energy. So remember your steps to success. The second step was to know the different forms of stored energy. So you need to know and give examples of stored energy. Let's look at the first one. So kinetic energy. You probably have seen this before during your SPE times. So kinetic energy is when an object is in motion or moving. So if something is moving, it has kinetic energy. Next is gravitational potential energy. So this is an energy stored in an object that is lifted off above the surface of the Earth. So basically, if the object is above the surface of the Earth, just has to be above the surface, then you have potential energy and it's not moving. Okay, so if it's at one point and it's above the surface of the Earth, it's gravitational potential energy. Next is, so you have chemical energy. So chemical energy is energy stored in an object that has chemical content. For example, batteries. In batteries, you have chemical energy. Plants, food. In those, you have chemical energy to give you energy to move. Next is elastic energy. So elastic energy is energy stored in an object that has been stretched, bent, or compressed. So when you stretch something, so if you have the spring, for example, you're stretching it, right? So during that stretch, you have elastic energy stored. Next, you have nuclear energy. So nuclear energy is basically energy that is stored in atoms, such as hydrogen or uranium. Electrostatic energy is energy stored as positive and negative charges in an object. You will learn more about this later on in the year. And lastly, thermal energy. So thermal energy is energy stored in an object that affects the internal temperature of the object. So basically, thermal energy is the energy that determines your temperature. So right now, since we are in the COVID situation, usually you have the COVID temperature screening to check your temperature. So when they're checking your temperature, they're checking your thermal energy. And those are the forms of stored energy that you should know. Now that you have forms of stored energy, we're moving on to the third steps to success, which is forms of energy during transfer. So the first one is mechanical energy. So mechanical energy is the energy change from kinetic to gravitational, or from gravitational energy to kinetic energy. Okay. So gravitational energy and kinetic energy, they're under mechanical energy. Okay, basically they're interchangeable. So during a process, gravitational can become kinetic, kinetic can turn to gravitational energy. So in this sense, kinetic and gravitational energy is also a form of energy transfer. So it can be both energy transfer or energy stored. Next is sound energy. So sound energy is the energy change when the process gives out vibrations that can be heard. So if you hear noise or if the table is vibrating, that's sound energy. Wave energy is the energy change from the movements of the sea waves. Electromagnetic energy is the energy change from waves of the electromagnetic spectrum. So again, you'll probably learn about this later on in your combined science subject. Then you have heat energy. So any energy that involves a loss or gain in temperature during a process is heat energy. This is different from thermal energy. Heat energy is when you lose or gain the heat. Thermal energy is when the energy is inside your body or an object. Okay, so heat energy is during a process. Thermal energy is during a state. There is no process involved. Then you have electrical energy, so the energy resulting from the movement of electrons inside a circuit. Okay, so that's electrical energy. And there you go, you have forms of energy during transfer. Now you have some idea on how stored energy are like, and then how energy can be transferred. Okay, like kinetic and gravitational energy doesn't mean just because it's stored energy, it can't be energy transferred. Sometimes they can overlap. Okay, one energy can be energy stored or energy transferred at the same time. It depends on the situation. So let's look at an example. So here you have a roller coaster. It's been a while since I've seen a roller coaster in real life. So when the roller coaster goes down, okay, there's an energy transfer taking place. So when it's at the top here, okay, the top where it starts off with, that is gravitational energy, because the roller coaster is really far away from the surface of the earth. So you have gravitational energy. Then when it starts moving down, as it slides down, goes down like that, this gravitational energy changes to kinetic energy. So that's the energy transfer you see in this diagram. Right, let's check the next example. So this person is using a bow. So what type of energy transfer do you see in the bow? So when the person pulls the bow taut like that, right? At one point, pulls the bow taut, you have elastic energy stored. Then when the person lets it go, you have kinetic energy, which pushes the arrow to the front. Okay, so when the person is pulling it, you have elastic energy, and then when the person lets it go, you have kinetic energy. Another example, so when you make toasters, here you start with electrical energy because the toaster is connected to electricity. So this electrical energy is turned into kinetic energy that pushes the bread out, and also heat energy that toasts the bread. Okay, so here you have two types of energy transfer. Electrical energy becomes kinetic, and also heat energy. So that's it for today's lesson. So basically you just need to remember the principle of conservation of energy. Okay, you need to know that. That's very important. Then you need to know the stored energy and also transferred energy, and able to recognize them in examples. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening.